Hey there, laser makers. Jim here with another tutorial. This one's on the array tool. Today we'll be covering the array system and how that works, as well as how you can manage the different aspects and explaining kind of like what the different options in the array tool do. So without further ado, let's get started. We have a couple objects I've set up on the screen just so I can start building the array. We're going to start with this hex here. We're going to create an array. We're going to use this array button down here that says create array of the selected objects. Now you can select multiple objects. You can select a group of objects. Um, if you don't select an item that you want in the array, we'll cover that in just a minute. Or vice versa, if you select too many items and you create an array and there's something you don't want in the array, we'll cover that as well. So let's go ahead and smash that array button. And the first thing we're going to get is this grid array tool. What we're going to do is we're going to create some columns. So for now, I'm going to create two columns and two rows Actually, I'll create three rows. Um, Now I already have some settings set up, so we'll kind of go over that here in just a minute, so you can see what's going on there. Um, the way I typically use my arrays is the distance from center to center, depending on what the objects are. So uh, as it kind of surmises, as you can kind of guess from the two names, the distance between edges or the distance between center to center has to do with the so like in your columns, it's going to be the distance between the left or the rightmost edge of one column and the leftmost edge of the next column. So if you used padding between edges, let's just go ahead and do that real quick and set it to 0. Let's turn off this shift by half so you can see what's going on here. So right now it's set to 57. So between the two columns here, I have 57 millimeters. So if we can reduce that to 25. Uh, so that's the distance between the edges. So if you're trying to lay out elements and you wanted them spaced evenly, like typically like 3 millimeters apart, so you didn't overlap when you were cutting. Like if you wanted to cut a bunch of objects and leave a 3 millimeter gap between them, you could do that certainly with the array tool. Um, or you can use center to center distance and set that to, like, if you had an object that was 100 millimeters across and you wanted them spaced apart 200 millimeters from the center line to the center line of the columns. So we're going to go ahead and set that back to 57 because I had that set a certain way. Um, so anyways, let's move forward here just a little bit. I'm gonna create an array here. I'm gonna create distance from center to center. I know that these items are 100 millimeters wide, so I'm gonna set center to center as 103. It gives us a 3 millimeter space between them, but I could use padding between edges. Now, the next option here, reverse direction, does exactly what it sounds. Right now, the default order is the array will go off to the right. If you hit reverse direction, it goes off to the left instead. So typically you don't have to do that, but if you, for some reason, are working from right to left instead of left to right, that's what that's for. Now, shift by half. Um, it may take a little playing with to understand exactly what and how you're doing this or why you're doing this. But basically, it shifts the vertical. So if you're building a horizontal array, so you're building columns, and if you say shift by half, what it's going to do is going to shift vertically half the height of the column. In this case, I don't know exactly what my vertical height of this is. I know it's 100 millimeters wide, but it's looks like it's 86.5 millimeters tall. So it's going to shift that by 43.3. So 43.3 down when I choose that option, which um, is useful if you're trying to like lay out items and you want to fit as many as you can. And we'll get to how you can squish them kind of horizontally uh, closer to each other in just a moment. So shift by half. Conversely, your other option is to use the X column shift. And so you can do that manually. Like if you didn't want to shift necessarily by half, you can shift by some other distance there. So like if you were trying to lay something out um, where you wanted like a hex grid, or if you were trying to build a honeycomb, you could kind of do that by fiddling with the numbers here to get them to line up just right. Um, Now, without me having some other items here, this mirror column or mirror alternate columns is going to not make much sense. So we're going to skip that for now. I will come back to that in just a minute. So let's go ahead and create our array just as it is without discussing the other options. Now, one of the things I kind of mentioned earlier was adding items or removing items from your array. So let's say you created this array with the hex items and you realized, oh, you know what, I need this little circle here to be added to the array. So what you can do is you can just hold control and select an additional item. As long as you have one of the items in the array already selected, so you can control and select an additional item, and then we're going to right click on that, and we're going to say add to array. What that's going to do is it's going to take anything you've now selected and add it to the existing array that some of the items are already in. So we're going to go ahead and add to the array. What you'll see is we now have that circle added to all the items. So let's go back and conversely, we can do the same thing, right? So say we want to remove the circle from the array, we can select just the item we want to remove and say remove from array. So we're going to go ahead and add that back in there. Add to array. And then we're going to go ahead and edit that array. If you have the item selected, you can also click the array button. I prefer right clicking and saying edit from edit array. So now mirror columns in the X. Let me add a second item to make it easier to see here. Add a second item. Move it down here, and we'll just move it over here. We'll go ahead and add that to the array also. All right. So now let's edit the array. And so when we shift, mirror the columns or mirror the X in every other column. So what it's going to do is like the first column will be this, the next one will be mirrored, so it's switched to the left. And then the same thing applies. This is the vertical direction, so mirror columns in the Y, so it's every other column will get alternated. I personally haven't found a great use for this just yet, but I'm sure there is one. I just haven't thought of it. Sometimes you want to mirror things to make things closer together. Like you might want to mirror things to reduce the amount of travel that your laser's taking. So those are the reasons for that. Auto increment variable text, this option down here at the bottom. This has to do with auto like auto numbering and auto and like CSV merges. I'm not going to cover that in this tutorial. I do have another tutorial about that. I'll try to put a comment down there with what that other link to that other tutorial is. But it's safe to just leave that on. And like typically you would just leave it on because it's not going to have any effect on your array. The last item in here is create virtual array. Now, the difference between a virtual array and a regular array. Once you create this regular array, it is created. So basically, you're duplicating the items. Um, like if you need a whole lot of circles, but you're going to manipulate each one individually after you've created them, you might want to not create a virtual array. But if you're creating a bulk set of stuff that you just want to edit one copy of it, you're going to probably want a virtual array. So that way you can just edit one copy. Um, so like, let's say, oh, you decide you want to move this circle over. If you have a virtual array, editing the kind of the parent object will manipulate all the items in the array at the same time. So let's go ahead and edit this array. And now let's give this a couple more rows. So we have a single row with 4 columns right now. We're going to go ahead and add a couple more. Let's see if we can create this so that you can kind of see what's going on here. Get rid of some let's set the 0 row shift. And let's set some Y spacing to 86. Let's call it 89. There we go. Or we could say padding to edges. We could say 3. So now what we've done now is we've created 3 rows. So the top row, we have these staggered items because we're shifting, doing a column shift. Let's change that to a shift by half. Now, what we want to do on the other direction is we want to remove some shifts. So we want to like nest these guys. Oops. So we want to bring these columns together. So now that we've shifted them vertically by half, we can reduce the spacing. So we could reduce the spacing to kind of get some kind of pattern like that. So like if we wanted to make a honeycomb, I'll show you another scenario where we might create an array. Let's go ahead and create an array here with circles. I do this for like ornaments a lot, where I'll shift them by half just so I can maximize the amount of items I can get on a cut space without wasting a lot of material. So that pretty much covers how the arrays work. Like, let me know if you have questions. Like, I spend a lot of time working with the arrays. It's a lot harder for me to like think about different scenarios that you might want to see. So if you have like a specific setup that you want to see, or you want to know like how to set up an array to do a certain thing, let me know down in the comments, and I will get back to you and maybe either create a video or answer you in the comments if it's something simple. But I hope this helps everyone. Have fun and keep lasering.